They said cowboys looked a certain way: white, rugged, silent. They rode into town with dust on their boots and a six-shooter on their hip. That was the legend, we were told. The one written into Hollywood scripts, cast into bronze statues, and burned into our cultural memory. But there's a truth that rarely made it into the movies. 1 in 4 cowboys in the Old West was black, and among them was a man who didn't just ride horses, he redefined the rules of the entire rodeo world. A man who invented one of the most thrilling, dangerous, and iconic events still performed in rodeos today. He wasn't a myth, he was real. His name was Bill Pickett, and he was the black cowboy who revolutionized rodeos. In a time when black Americans were still fighting for basic human rights, Bill Pickett soared through the air from the back of a galloping horse to bring down a steer with nothing but his bare hands and sometimes his teeth. Crowds gasped. Opponents watched in disbelief. What he did wasn't just courageous, it was unheard of. And he didn't stop at inventing a sport. He forced himself into a world that tried to keep him out. He performed in front of kings, wowed international audiences, and became one of the most famous rodeo stars in the world without ever being allowed to be fully seen for who he was. This is not just a story about a man who tamed wild animals. This is the untold story of a man who tamed history itself, a black cowboy who refused to be forgotten. For most people, the image of the American cowboy is tightly linked to white men riding through dusty plains. The rugged Marlboro Man, John Wayne, and Clint Eastwood dominate the public's imagination of the Old West. Yet, this version of history hides a richer, more complex truth. Nearly 1 in 4 cowboys during the golden age of the American West were black. Among them, one man stood out, not just as a symbol of forgotten history, but as a living legend who reshaped the world of rodeos. His name was Bill Pickett. Born in 1817, Travis County, Texas, Bill Pickett would grow up to become one of the most recognized figures in the world of rodeo sports. But his journey wasn't an easy one. Pickett was a black man living in post-Civil War America, a time when racism and segregation defined daily life for millions. Despite the odds, Bill rose from humble beginnings to become a pioneer, not just as a black cowboy, but as a world-renowned rodeo performer who invented an entire event still practiced in rodeos today. Bill Pickett was one of 13 children born to Thomas Jefferson Pickett, a former slave, and Mary Janie Gilbert. The Pickett family was of African American and Cherokee descent. Raised in a rural area, Bill had minimal formal schooling. Instead, he learned through life taming horses, working on ranches, and absorbing the culture of the American frontier.
From an early age, Bill was fascinated by the work of cowboys and the art of handling cattle. He observed cattlemen and Mexican vaqueros who were experts in roping, riding, and branding. These early influences would shape his future and give rise to a new chapter in rodeo history. Bill worked as a ranch hand and horse trainer, but his talent for managing wild cattle became legendary. While other cowboys relied on ropes to bring down steers, Bill came up with something entirely different. He noticed how bulldogs would grab steers by the lips and wrestle them to the ground. Inspired by this, Bill began experimenting with a method that mimicked this behavior. This technique, known as bulldogging, involved leaping from a running horse onto the back of a steer, biting its upper lip, and wrestling it to the ground using his body weight and leverage. It was daring, unorthodox, and entirely original. Though modern rodeo performers no longer use their teeth, the sport of steer wrestling, as it is now called, owes its existence to Bill Pickett. Pickett's bulldogging quickly gained attention. It was thrilling to watch and incredibly risky. He began performing in local exhibitions and soon joined a traveling Wild West show. These shows were immensely popular in the late 1800s and early 1900s, combining elements of circus, drama, and rodeo into one grand spectacle. For a cowboy like Pickett, they were the ultimate stage. Eventually, Pickett was recruited by the Miller Brothers' 101 Ranch Wild West show, one of the biggest and most famous of its kind. He performed alongside icons like Buffalo Bill Cody, Will Rogers, and Tom Mix. His act became a major draw for audiences around the United States and even internationally. When the show toured Mexico and Europe, Pickett stunned crowds with his fearless performances. But even with his growing fame, Pickett still faced the heavy hand of racism. Many promoters would not allow him to perform under his real name or racial identity. In some instances, he was falsely advertised as being Native American or even mixed blood to make him more palatable to white audiences. Despite this erasure, his style and skills were unmistakable. Bill Pickett didn't just perform, he dazzled. Dressed in his signature cowboy hat, leather chaps, and boots, he commanded attention with his athleticism, timing, and showmanship. Watching him leap from horseback onto a charging steer was like witnessing a man defy gravity. Through it all, Pickett never lost his roots. He returned often to the 101 Ranch in Oklahoma, where he helped with ranch work and mentored younger cowboys. He was a husband and a father of 9 children. Beyond his performance career, he remained a working cowboy, living proof of the skill and courage it took to tame the West.
His contributions were not limited to entertainment. Pickett helped carve a space for black cowboys in a landscape that tried to erase them. At a time when Jim Crow laws segregated every part of life, Pickett became a symbol of resilience and excellence. He stood as a reminder that African Americans were not just part of the West, they helped build it. Bill's legacy extended well beyond the arenas and ranches. His innovation set a standard in rodeo events and created a foundation for generations of performers. Steer wrestling, now one of the standard rodeo competitions, is recognized by the Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association (PRCA) in practice worldwide. And although the sport no longer involves lip biting, the essence of the event, the leap, the takedown, the grit, is pure Pickett. In 1932, Bill Pickett passed away after being kicked in the head by a horse. He was 61 years old. His death marked the end of a remarkable life, but his legend only grew. It would take many decades for mainstream America to fully recognize Pickett's contributions. In 1971, he was posthumously inducted into the National Cowboy Hall of Fame, becoming the first black cowboy to receive the honor. He has also been commemorated with the U.S. postage stamp, and several schools and events bear his name. One of the most enduring tributes to Pickett is the Bill Pickett Invitational Rodeo. Founded in 1984, it is the only touring African-American rodeo in the world and exists to celebrate the legacy of black cowboys and cowgirls. The event brings together skilled competitors, honors historical figures, and educates audiences about the often overlooked role African-Americans played in shaping Western culture. Each year, thousands attend the Bill Pickett Rodeo in cities like Los Angeles, Atlanta, and Washington, D.C. It is more than just a sporting event, it is a cultural celebration. Young riders, some of whom had never seen a black cowboy before, watch seasoned professionals compete in barrel racing, bull riding, and of course, steer wrestling. For many, this rodeo is not just about winning, it's about identity. It's about reclaiming a past that history books tried to forget. And it's about standing on the shoulders of pioneers like Bill Pickett, who dared to be seen in a world that tried to make him invisible. Pickett's story also reshaped how historians, writers, and artists portray the American West. Once seen as a white-only domain, the West is now recognized for its diversity. Black cowboys, Mexican vaqueros, Native Americans, and Chinese laborers all played vital roles in its expansion. Bill Pickett's legacy helps drive that narrative shift, showing that heroism, innovation, and bravery know no color. His life story has inspired films, books, and museum exhibitions. He's been portrayed in documentaries and praised in hip-hop lyrics. The recognition he long deserved is finally catching up to the legacy he left behind.
And yet, the work isn't done. Many people still don't know about Bill Pickett or the history of black cowboys in general. That's why projects like the Bill Pickett Invitational Rodeo and education initiatives are so important. They don't just preserve history, they challenge myths. They remind us that the Old West was never a single story. It was a tapestry of cultures, languages, and identities. And in that tapestry, Bill Pickett's thread is bright and bold. As rodeos evolve, so too does the memory of the man who revolutionized them. Every time a cowboy sides off a galloping horse to wrestle a steer to the ground, whether in Texas or Tokyo, they are following in Bill Pickett's footsteps. From rural Texas fields to international arenas, from the shadows of obscurity to the pages of history books, Bill Pickett's journey is nothing short of extraordinary. In the early 1900s, Bill's fame reached new heights when he joined the Miller Brothers 101 Ranch Wild West show in Oklahoma. The 101 Ranch was one of the biggest traveling shows in the United States at the time, featuring famous names like Will Rogers and Tom Mix. Bill Pickett stood out even among legends. He would gallop full speed in front of packed crowds, leap off his horse, and take down a wild steer in only his body and his bulldogging technique. The crowds went wild every time, but success didn't shield him from racism. Because of the color of his skin, he was often denied the credit he deserved. In some places, show promoters listed him as a Native American or hid his racial identity altogether just to allow him to perform. Despite being one of the main attractions of the 101 Ranch show, he often faced segregation and was not allowed to perform in certain towns or appear in promotional posters as a black man. But Bill kept going, focused on doing what he loved and showing the world what he could do. When he wasn't performing, Bill lived the life of a working cowboy. He broke horses, trained young riders, and worked on the 101 Ranch when the show wasn't on tour. He married and had 9 children. His family lived a modest but meaningful life, surrounded by horses, cattle, and the spirit of the open range. Bill Pickett wasn't just a performer, he was the real deal. He did everything a cowboy did: herding, branding, taming wild animals, while also entertaining massive crowds.
He was a cowboy, a performer, a family man, and a revolutionary. He changed rodeos forever. Bill Pickett didn't wear a cape. He didn't fight battles with a sword. He didn't command armies or write laws. But what he did was just as bold. He looked at a world that told him he didn't belong and made himself impossible to ignore. With nothing but his horse, his hands, and his courage, he created a legacy that still lives on over a century later. Every time a cowboy leaps from a galloping horse to take down a charging steer, they are following in Bill Pickett's footsteps. Every rodeo arena that roars with excitement during steer wrestling owes its energy to the man who turned livestock handling into a sport. And every young black cowboy or cowgirl who saddles up, looking for their place in a world that once tried to erase them, carries a part of Pickett's spirit. His name might not be as famous as the fictional cowboys from Western films, but his story is more real and far more inspiring. He broke barriers without asking for permission. He changed the game without ever being invited to play. And though history tried to write him out, the rodeo wrote him back in. Bill Pickett didn't just revolutionize rodeos. He reminded the world that legends come in all colors and that sometimes the greatest cowboys are the ones history almost forgot.